In a world that is robbing dudes of their dudeness, three normal, everyday, middle-aged dudes are taking a stand for dudes everywhere. Join us as we talk about life as a dude in today's world.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Dudefinity podcast, the only podcast dedicated to all things dude. My name is Sterling, and joining me as always, recently returning from a 6-week ICU admission after telling his wife, "Baby, you know, in that dress, you look just as good as Lizzo." Recently extubated and off his face on pain meds, Jordan.
Whew, I got nothing. I got nothing this week. That one. Yikes. Yeah. Hey guys, don't try that. I do think that I would wind up in the 6-week coma, probably on some pain meds, probably not in a great spot, right? But no, happy to be here. Thanks for that introduction, I think. It's been a fun ride so far. We have a heavy topic to talk about today, but first and foremost, we're going to talk about a few little fun topics. I have a question for you, Sterling. I'm very curious. I've been dying to ask this. Is this Boston Celtics team a possible title contender?
Ooh. I think
Let me spit some facts. Jaylen
Okay.
Brown's playing top. Jaylen Brown is playing the best he's ever played.
Yep.
As his usage has gone up to start the season, there was a lot of turnovers. They adjusted the offense. I'm very hard on Joe Mazzulla. That is on Joe Mazzulla for adjusting that offense. I will be the first one to admit it. Sam Cassell is working with the young guys, developing them very nicely. Jalen's turnovers have gone down, which has always been a pain point for you and I with him, regardless. As much as you've been a Jaylen Brown supporter, I've always been a naysayer about the amount of turnovers and the fact that he has no left hand. Coincidentally, look it up. He's going right more than he's going left. So,
well, of course he is.
But, super impressed with what they're doing. They've beaten the Pistons, top team in the East. They've beaten the Raptors, another top team in the East. They have handled the Lakers. They are a team right now.
A Luka-less Lakers.
But of course. I'm just saying, hey, a Luka-less Lakers tends to have an Austin Reeves blow up of like 50 points. So let's just be honest, man. Like, this Boston Celtics team is competing day in and day out and look very good defensively. And oh, by the way, 7 months removed, Tatum is playing one-on-one today at practice and looks very good. So do we get him back? And is this a title team that we could make a run with?
So the first thing I'm going to say is what impressed me about that Lakers win was how uncomfortable they were able to make Austin Reeves.
Yeah.
That is specifically Walsh.
Yeah.
He
ball
is
hawk. Complete
an absolute
hawk.
ball hawk. And generally, Austin Reeves is not a guy that many teams have much success making him look uncomfortable with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, they rattled in that whole game.
They did. And so that was fantastic. Is this team a title contender? What I can say unequivocally, considering the landscape in the Eastern Conference, is that I think they have as much chance of making it to the finals as any other team.
Which puts them as a contender.
Which does technically put them as a title contender. Jaylen Brown playing at the level that he's playing, we've talked about this in previous podcasts. He is showing it can be the guy. 100%.
Yeah, boy, we were wrong on that one at the beginning.
We were. Initially, we were wrong. But you look at a guy who is shooting 52% from the field. He is leading the NBA in mid-range scoring. He's shooting well over 50% from the mid-range. He is driving to the basket more. And I think the big takeaway from this is that considering Joe Mazzulla adjusting the offense,
you're never going to let me let that go, are you?
Allow them to score on 3 levels. Are they still shooting a ton of threes? Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, but believe it or not,
offense.
But you know that they're actually down on threes this year over years past, and they started the season shooting the same clip that they were before, but guys weren't shooting their averages because Tatum wasn't on the court to draw that double team.
Yeah.
And so what I think you're going to see is I think that as if Jalen consistently keeps doing what he's doing at this moment, those double teams are going to start to come a little more. And guess what? Peyton Pritchard all of a sudden is going to shoot the three at a more efficient clip. And Derek White's going to get more open looks. So, this is a newfound evolving thing, but I got to tell you, man, I love it from top to bottom. I love that Brown is balling out. I love that Keita has proven that he is probably going to be our starting center next year. Dude is settled down. I don't know if they took him off his Ritalin or what, but the boy is finally calmed down. I don't know. Kind of wild. But tell me if you think that I'm going to say this to you, and then I want to see what your thoughts are. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we played the Wizards recently. By all accounts,
Yes.
we should beat the Wizards every time. I mean, they're a bunch of old, washed up, often injured vets with a sprinkled mix of youth. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're some chiseled veterans at this point. Jalen's a veteran. Derek White's a veteran. Sam Hauser's a veteran. Peyton Pritchard's a veteran. We have some veterans who are battle tested and made deep runs. Now, if I told you that the Washington Wizards, with the team that we played last week against them without Jason Tatum on the floor, okay, the players that were available to play, we have a lower payroll than that Washington Wizards team that we played.
I actually had heard that. But it says a lot. They're playing at a clip that I do, again, we've talked about putting the cart before the horse here before.
Might be 4 miles, folks.
Might be 4 miles before the horse. But, I think that they do legitimately have a chance. I would love to see, it's tough because Anthony Simons has been playing so well coming off the bench. He's shooting the deep ball well. Granted, he's not the best defender. And honestly, they have one of the best offenses in the league. I believe, I might be wrong here, but as
efficiency-wise, yes.
Efficiency-wise, when Keita is off the floor, they are the most efficient offense in the league. Now,
here's the problem. Let me ask you this. If you're building this team and you're trying to roll with this team, right? Yeah. Anthony Simons, you've got a 2-month window that you have to decide, am I trading this guy or what? I'm going to let him walk for nothing. So if you don't trade him, you have $27 million free up at the end of the year, come off the books.
Yeah.
But you also got him, you gave away Drew Holiday for nothing. So do you trade him or do you leave him on your bench as a $27 million bench burner? It's not stacking up for me, man. We own Keita right now. We need another big. I hate to say it. My opinion is swing Simmons somewhere. I don't know where. Simons somewhere.
So here's what I'll say. I don't think you can look at it as they gave Drew Holiday away for nothing. At the end of the day, they don't want to be in that second apron. They don't want to be over, if the biggest reason they got rid of Drew Holiday was the salary cap to free up cap space. So they got that, even though.
Well, how do you compete in today's NBA at the top level with the way the CBA is? How do you compete without going into the second apron? The Rockets are going to get there very quickly.
Yep.
The Thunder, got news for you. That team's going to break up. Give them 3 years. They can't keep together. It's not going to happen.
So you and I talked last week, I think, about the CBA, and I was making the statement that it's reactionary. The NBA is very reactionary. So I want you to. I'm gonna walk you through a timeline here, and you tell me whether you think I'm wildly off base. Okay. So you have new TV contract, right? Previously, you've got this new TV contract with a Golden State team that was already the best one in the league. Rather than metering it out over time, like they did with this last one, they gave that increase in salary cap all at once. Golden State goes out, gets Kevin Durant, creates the most wild super team that I can think of off the top of my head. All right, goes out and wins a championship.
I'm going to challenge that real quick, but we can go back to it after.
Okay.
The Lakers with GP and Shaq and Karl Malone, that was a wild super team.
That was a pretty wild super team. They were just old. But this was KD at the peak of his powers.
Yeah, which is wild.
So they've got this, they've created the super team. The NBA says, okay, we're going to do some things to try and change this. We're going to create a supermax to entice players to stay with the team that they were drafted with, right? So you get this wild amount of money. They're reactionary to Kevin Durant leaving the Thunder and going to Golden State. So they create the Supermax. Now they go, we want more parity in the league. And I know we've done this whole Supermax thing, but what we're also going to do is create the most handcuffing CBA that we can think of to make it so that a team can't be that good for that long. But we also want players to stay where they are with this Supermax. It doesn't make any sense when you really think about it. What they've done is basically said, we want you to keep your best player. We want them to stay with you. But we're going to make it so difficult for you if you go over the salary cap that you're going to basically have to wipe out most of your team aside from that one player. I'm telling you, this CBA is
It's restrictive.
It's so restrictive it can't stay the way it is for that long.
No, and part of the problem is, and let's think about this for a second. So owners don't want to give up money. Players want to make more money, right? But the NBA as a whole is making money. Like the NBA is a global juggernaut in terms of what they're doing in a brand. Yes, they've lost some revenue share with butts in the seat, but it's because people can watch them at home. And people can buy streaming services, and people can do a lot of different. There's access to games without going to the game now. Okay, more so than there's ever been.
I think, but their TV ratings are also down, and I wonder. I don't think it's necessarily fewer people watching what's happening. I think they're consuming it in a different way by watching things like highlights, because you can go on YouTube and watch the highlights from a game.
Yes, but I'm going to give you a hot take on this. Here's
Okay.
why I think sports viewership's down. Because it's down across multiple sports. Okay. Do you think everyday Joes are going to pay $30 a month to watch the NBA on their league pass when they can go out and find it for free on a stream that doesn't track viewership? Because of the age of illegal streaming, I tend to think that people are still watching. It's not like my dad was a sports fan. My dad doesn't watch this, just so everybody's clear, but example purposes, it's not like he was a sports fan for 40 years and then all of a sudden just quit watching sports. Where'd he go? Where I think they went is to the access that is available to them, and it's had a direct impact on the viewership ratings, but it's because they're finding it in different ways.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that.
So, in the very beginning, one of the videos we posted was Sterling saying, who are these guys and why should you care? And honestly, this episode today might be why you should care, because it's very important to us. This is why we started Dudefinity, was even if we reach one person with this message on mental health and letting people know they're not alone, then we're so successful. So just please bear with us. This is a tough topic to talk about. Probably going to get a little vulnerable with you guys just about how we feel about it. But let's buckle up and get ready, because Sterling has some facts he wants to spit, and I got a few hot takes I want to put out there and see how he feels about them.
So one of the things that we've said a couple of times is, that no one's coming to save you as a guy. I think the only things on earth that get unconditional love are children and pets. Everything else for the most part is in some way transactional.
Yes.
But the flip side to that is especially for men, is having that battle buddy. You gotta have some guys around you that are in your corner, that you can talk to, that can be there for you when you're having a rough time, that can lift you up, that can sometimes drag you kicking and screaming to what you need to do.
Been down that road a few times, haven't we, buddy?
Fact. So here's some. As we talk about men's mental health, and I want to stress that this is kind of an epidemic that is, for the most part, going unaddressed. Suicide rates for men are 4 times higher than they are for women in the U.S. And that's actually older men are the largest group. And I was talking to a guy that I work with, and he was bringing up to me that, he's moved. He and his wife have moved farther out of town. He's more isolated now. And it's something that he's concerned with because, as he gets ready to retire and loses some of those interpersonal connections that you have in the workplace. And, he's just worried that, maybe he's putting himself at risk for some of this increasing depression in that age group.
Do you think some of this, I want to ask a question on this real
Mm-hmm.
quick. Do you think some of that is generational? And when I say that, okay, your dad.
Yeah.
Love your dad to death. Your dad wasn't sitting around talking about his feelings with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
My dad doesn't talk about his feelings. You know, is there a stigma in the older generations where they've become so unwilling to communicate with each other that they just kind of suffer in silence, so to speak, and bear the burden for everybody so much that they just can't let it out because
Well,
it's just not a sign of strength for them?
I don't necessarily think it's an issue of a sign of strength. I think for most men, the biggest thing that they're concerned about or the biggest worry that they have is
Yeah,
that they are being a burden to somebody else. You
right.
know, we talk about this. You want to pull your own weight, and in fact, you want to pull the weight of the people that you love. You don't want them to have to suffer, or you don't want them to have to be stressed out. You want to take that on yourself, right? As a man. So I think it's not so much that it's like machismo or a sign of weakness or anything. They just don't want to. Most guys just don't want to be a burden to their friends or family. You know, if I'm calling you at 3 a.m. because I am distraught and just having the worst time ever.
Yeah,
I've woken you up at 3 a.m. This guy's got to go to work in the morning. He's got his own family, his own things to worry about. Why am I putting my on him? And so I think that's where a lot of it stems from. I don't know how you feel about it, but
yeah, I just tend to think that, like, I hear you in
Mhm.
that, like, not wanting to share and do that, but I also think that it was learned behavior. I think the generation before him just suffered in silence. I think that, even the generations before us suffered in silence. The generation below us and kind of the new age people, they tend to be able to communicate a little bit more, or they want to talk about their emotions a little more, so to speak. I'm not sure what that has to do, what the correlation is there, but I just was more curious, like, do you think that let me put it to you this way. If we had sons and not daughters, do you think
Mhm,
that if they watched us in today's world, the way that we navigate and communicate about our feelings and the way that we talk to each other, because you are my battle buddy, I,
mhm.
and I am yours, do you think that they would be more inclined to find that because they've seen that modeled behavior?
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
I absolutely think that. But I think there are benefits and risks associated with the world that we live in today.
Yeah.
One of the great things is that you and I can sit here and create a podcast and put it out into the world. And other than the sweat equity, it really doesn't cost us a bunch of money. It's not
No.
particularly it's time consuming, but it's not some massive financial drain for us to do this, as it would
Yeah.
be 40 years ago. But on the flip side, there is a screen between a lot of people. you
Yeah.
know those interpersonal connections that people need to to be successful and to live a fairly happy life aren't really there. There's this great book, and if you get a chance to read it, you should. It's by an author by the name of Sebastian Younger. The book is called Tribe, and it's a
It's the second time
fantastic
I've
book.
heard of this book in
Yeah,
about a month.
it's a really good book. And one of the things that it talks about is that we just aren't designed to exist in a world where we have to keep track. We're not able to keep track of thousands of other people. We're able to keep track of about 150-ish people that we are supposed to live in close knit communities, where we support and work with each other. And one of my favorite stories in this book, he is talking about the Blitz during World War II in the United Kingdom, where one of the things that they were concerned about, because they knew this attack from the Germans was coming, and they fully expected London to be bombed by the Third Reich. And their thought was, well, we're going to have all of these people who we already have a part of our population with mental health issues, and we're going to have more of that, right? Because this is going to be stressful. These people are going to be dealing with not just an existential threat, but a physical threat to their lives. So
Yeah.
how are we going to help them through that and navigate that strain on and mental toll? And what they found was that in reality, because everybody was having this shared experience and everyone was forced in a way to come together in a group, the people who had, barely the ability to exist in the world because of their mental health issues were the ones driving ambulances. And I go back to this a lot, and I know I'm kind of doing a lot of talking here. I apologize, but I think that there's a couple of things men need. They need to be happy, and they need to exist in the world in a positive way. One of them is a purpose. You have
Yeah.
to have a purpose. If you are rudderless and purposeless, it's not good for men to have that. And then on top of that, I think you also need a tight knit and close group of male friends. Though, if you have those two things, then you're doing okay.
Oh, so this is a good
Went on a rant
point.
there.
No, it's okay, man. It's a good point. I mean, that's really cool. I wrote down the book because you're the second person in a couple of weeks. One of the people that I work with actually mentioned that to me recently. What I want to say something, and I know I'm just gonna call it what it is. You're divorced, recently divorced. You're going,
Mhm,
you're living life. You're doing a good job. You've, been fine, but it's because you leaned on community as you were going through that divorce, your tight knit
mhm,
community, to help kind of keep your guardrails up, and keep you focused ahead. Um, when I make this statement, it's not to knock people who are divorced.
mhm,
Okay. There is a direct correlation, and it's just a fact that there are lower rates of depression, there are lower rates of anxiety, there are lower rates of suicide amongst married men
mhm,
versus single men. And so I think the other thing is we need that relationship in our life to give us
mhm,
part of that purpose you talk about. I feel
mhm,
like that's part of the purpose, checking the box there. But I also feel like you have somebody that you consistently rely on. I'll tell you right now, my wife, I love her to death. Her and I don't always see eye to eye. We're very different people. She's very type A. I'm very type B. Not uncommon, not unlike Sterling and I. Sterling is very purposeful and very driven. I'm a little more freeform at life. But I think you need that balance, and I think that that helps. And she's my sounding board on a lot of things. She's there for me at night when I'm struggling. But there's that moment at night, and I know every guy knows this moment where you're laying in bed, the weight of the world, the weight of the burdens that you have for your family, the cares that you take on as you pick up every day and just pull up your boots and go through it. They keep you up, and the thoughts, you can't turn the thoughts off, and they're running back and forth. And I look over often and I want to tell her and I want to wake her up and I know she'd be there for me, but I don't. I don't, because it's not hers to take on. And
mhm,
I don't want her to worry, and I don't want her to stress. And so for me, I talk to Sterling, I talk to I've got a tight-knit group of people that I tend to communicate those things with, because I think that as much as we love our spouses and our significant others, there are just some things that they can't understand our perspective on because we are inherently male and we are inherently female. And so sometimes you just need that guy to be like, hey, I'm struggling, man. I'm really struggling. I'll tell you guys right now, one of the things that I struggle with a lot of times, and it's been a lifelong struggle, is sometimes I wonder if I'm enough. You know, did
mhm,
I do enough? Was I there enough? Could I have done more to make them happy? Could I have done more to make more money? Could I have done more? And the world just tells me that I have to keep going and I have to keep going for more. And sometimes that struggle for me is just, it's overwhelming, but I suffer it alone, and it's not a good thing. And I have suffered it alone at times, but I just want you guys to understand that there's a point in time where yes, you don't want to verbalize every thought that comes into your head. You don't want to be that guy who's constantly burdensome, like Sterling was saying. But at the same time, I could pick up the phone and call Sterling right now, and I could be bawling my eyes out on the floor in my bathroom, hiding from the world, and cry to him about what is going on in my life and how frustrated and how stressed I am and how I don't know which way's out. And just the voice on the other end of the phone makes it feel better.
Mhm.
And so, I think relationships, I went on a rant myself, but relationships are so integral to how we live and to how we and at our intrinsic mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Another statistic I wanna bring up, and I wanna get your perspective on. A quarter of men between the ages of 15 and 34 are express feeling lonely, essentially every day. Um, I think about that, and again, I wonder, and you and I have talked about the way dating works now.
God, I would not want to try that, boy. Oh,
Yeah.
let me tell you. Ooh.
Um, and I just I f- I feel like, again, we have, as a society, done these men a disservice uh, by telling them that just be nice, just be yourself, and when it comes to dating and relationships with uh, the opposite sex, you will be fine. Which you and I both know that's not really the case, right? You know, I
As a career salesman, I just want to point out to you guys, just a total plug for this. It's a numbers game, so keep trying.
yeah, no, absolutely. But and when most of what we do now,
Yeah.
most of our interaction takes place on a screen,
Yeah.
via text, you know, um, this is another population that I worry about because it's so prevalent now. And what is it going to look like 10 years down the road?
Yeah.
You know?
So when you say that about that age group, it doesn't surprise me
Hmm.
at all, that statistic, because the world has been designed to take us away from each other and to
Hmm.
steal the human interaction and to get the quick dopamine hits from the cell phones and the different things we do, so on screen. So, um, you and I have talked about this. One of the fastest downturns of anything is going out to bars and drinking.
Hmm.
Bars are not as full as they were. Yes, it's great that people are drinking less and the alcoholism is down, but at the same time, it's a social lubricant.
Hmm.
Alcohol makes people communicate with each other, so there's a level of social lubrication that takes somebody who is inherently an introvert and helps them become a little more relaxed to be an extrovert. And so or a little more extroverted. So I don't know how I feel about that generation and where they're gonna be, or that group of people that you're talking about. I
Hmm.
will say that at our deep core, no matter what, I still think we want human connection and we long for that human
Absolutely.
connection.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like built in our DNA for that connection. And so I
Mhm.
think that ultimately they'll they'll rebound and they'll find a way. But I do see what you're saying. It is kind of concerning because that also, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I'd have to fact check this, but I believe that was also one of the groups, the other age group that had a higher suicide rate right now.
Yeah. I, as far as I'm aware, it's 45 to about 54
Yep.
is the first group and 65 and older.
Yeah.
So what happens 45 to 54 generally? What life event takes
Kids
place?
leave the house, man, and then the
Hmm.
marriage falls apart.
Hmm. Yep.
And you're having to rely on a relationship that you didn't put first for a lot of years
Yeah.
because it's not that we didn't mean to, it's that we take it for granted. And so what happens is you don't put it first, and then next thing you know, your kid leaves the house and you're empty nesters and you realize, I don't know that person
Hmm.
and they
What
don't
about
know you.
65?
Uh,
What happens at
Retirement.
65?
retirement, purpose ends, life purpose
Yeah.
ends, man.
Mhm.
Retirement is such a big, I live in, you know this, I live
Mhm.
in my community, wasn't planned this way, just kind of happened, but there's 47 houses and then about 40 of them, there's a retiree in every household. And, you know, I'm around these guys, a lot of times they need a purpose. They
Mhm.
need a purpose. They need something to do every day. They're constantly calling, "Do you wanna go for a walk? Do you wanna do this? Do you wanna go get dinner? Do you wanna get a beer? Do you wanna get lunch?" And I'm available to them, you know? And so it just, you know, I I also worry that the retirement generation now from living around it struggles to understand as they're getting out of the workforce
Mhm.
to find those friends.
Yeah.
Like your buddy that you were talking to at work, right?
Mhm.
He moved out, he's worried about retirement. He needs to build community now.
Well,
That he
100%.
needs to build a
Yeah,
community that he
absolutely.
can rely on when he goes into retirement. You know, one of the things that we do is every Friday I have breakfast with, it's called Breakfast with the Bros, and it's literally just all the retirees and two guys that still work. And so now I don't want to work. I want to be retired, but I love my job, so I'll gladly do it for the next 30 years. But
But,
no,
it's go ahead.
in all reality, there are a lot of struggles that we as dads and we as dudes go through, as husbands, as fathers, as sons. The pressure that's put on us from relationships can break us sometimes and make it even worse and seem like the problem's compounding. Um, there's a lot of times you sit in a room full of your family. I don't know if you've had this happen to you, Sterling, but you're almost not even thinking about what's going on in the family at the moment. You're in your head and you
Mhm.
can't and you want to scream and you just there's some days where the pressure of the world seems so big that I just want to scream and I can't. And I just have to keep going. I have to
Mhm.
grind. I have to remember that I'm enough. I have to remember that I'm doing what I can for my family. And the other thing that happens, and it goes back to that taking for granted comment, and
Mhm.
it's no knock on anybody, but I do think that men are quick to give out compliments to women, whereas a lot of women sometimes have a hard time giving out compliments to men.
Uh-huh.
And really the only compliment that we need, I don't know about you, but the only one it's like the dog when you're giving them a treat because they went to the bathroom outside and you're like, good boy. All I ever want to hear is, hey, you did a good job. That's it.
Mhm.
No matter what it is, or thank you. And my wife's great about that. There's times where we haven't been. There's lulls that you go through in relationships where you're just kind of on smooth sailing, and then it's like, wait, oh yeah, we still have to do this stuff. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, you have a different perspective as me. I mean, right now, especially as a father who is recently divorced and in a very, well, not recently, but a couple of years removed, but in a very good relationship now.
Yeah.
Like a very good relationship. Not that your relationship before wasn't good. It was just you guys were different people and it just
Mm.
didn't work out. But you have found a partner that I think, builds you up in
Mhm.
the ways that you need to be built up. And so I think that, I personally have seen a transition in you from a mental health standpoint. You're more happy. You sound like you're smiling. You seem more present in life and less
Mhm.
like escaping.
Yeah, sure.
And so I I I, I can't stress enough how much that relationship can make or break you, man, but making sure you have that one that you find and that builds you up. But when they can't build you up or you're not getting what you need, the battle buddy's there to talk to about it.
Yeah. I think there are really important things to, again, I've talked about this before, but I think one of the manliest things that you can do is, we talk about like stoicism. I think it's really, in life, when you're out there in the world, that is really important. When you're as an example, you're at work and you're dealing with somebody and they are absolutely driving you nuts. You want to throttle them, right? But you don't.
No.
You don't show that outward anger. And it's not that you're pushing it down. It's not that you're suppressing it. And I think some people do. I don't think that that's the right way to handle it. I try whenever I've got some kind of huge emotional thing going on in that moment, I try and recognize it. I'm like, okay, this is really pissing me the fuck off. But
Bleep.
but what am I going to do about it? So
Yeah.
the best, and it's a thing, it's a skill. It's something that you have to work on. I am angry in this moment, but what I'm going to do is use my rational mind and have this conversation with this other person, expressing the issue that I'm having, but doing it in what I like to call manly way, straightforward and without this overly emotional outburst, because that's not good for you or for them. It's not going to move you towards what you need. Now, again, the big point to that is your emotions are real. It's a real thing. You can't just push it down and pretend that it doesn't exist. But they don't need to be the catalyst to your reaction. They don't. It doesn't need to be. You need to be. You need to be in control of your emotions. They cannot be in control of you.
I think that's a great point. One of the things that I want to make sure we say here
Mhm.
is we're not saying that you have to be perfect 100% of the time, guys, because I can tell you right now, I lose that battle a lot. I lose it a lot. I try not to. I tried, and I've gotten better as I've gotten older, but the big thing is I've let my emotions I've been able to temper my emotions in a way that if I can't handle them in that moment, I come back to it. I revisit it, I walk away, we talk about it later, or if there's something that has really gotten me pissed off, as Sterling said, I tend to kind of gripe about it to myself for a little bit before I go anywhere with it. But you know, you nobody's saying be perfect, guys. We're gonna fail. There's gonna be days where
Mhm.
your kid gets on your nerves and you kind of, where they push the right buttons and you snap for a second and it's a little more pointed than it should be. And I don't know about you, but when that happens with me, I instantly feel myself go, "Oh man, failed there," epic
Mhm.
fail. You're not a failure. I'm not a failure. We're just dads trying to do the best we can every day. We're dudes trying to do the best we can. Um, and we're not alone. And that's really what this whole thing is about, is building you might call it a movement, I call it a community. A community where you can come on to our page anytime, any one of our socials, send us a message and say, I'm struggling. And you're going to have someone hop in there and talk to you and encourage you and be right there for you. The last thing that we want is for anybody to feel like they don't have anyone to talk to. So if you feel that way, please message us, comment, reach out to us. We will reach out to you. I will tell
Yeah,
you
the
one thing
DM,
I've
the
noticed.
the DMs are open. You
Yeah.
know.
Well, one thing I've noticed is there's this huge dad supporting dad movement, which I am like loving because it kind of goes to the core of what we're trying to do here, even though we say it's about dudes. It's really about being a father in today's world too,
Mhm.
and in this movement, I'm seeing so much encouragement on the posts that people put up that you're not alone. Use the social media. If you reach out to somebody, but just don't suffer in silence. Please don't
Mhm.
suffer in silence.
All right. So one of the things I wanted to bring up was that I'm just looking for the figure here. It was 60% of men who experience depression will not get treatment for it. So I often wonder about this. Is it and we've talked about, you've brought this up multiple times, the suffering in silence. Uh, you know, uh what do you think the barriers are to that? Because the availability of mental health providers is better now than it's ever been, but that's still over half.
I'm gonna go right back to where I started. I think it's
Mhm.
a generational barrier. I think that they saw their dad not talk about it, and they saw their uncles and their grandfather and people like that not go to counseling, not get the help they need, and so I feel like there's a stigma around approaching that in a certain age range, especially probably in the north of 50 age range right
Mhm.
now,
Sure.
where just even reaching out to ask for help is a problem because it
Mhm.
feels like they know they have a problem, but reaching out feels like a problem too.
Sure.
And I think that what needs to happen is we need more men that more salt and pepper men, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, like older
Mm-hmm.
men, to come out and go, "Hey guys, I got help. Hey, I did this. I reached out to a mental health professional. I talked to my friend about this. I was struggling. I had depression. I was on this. I was on that. Whatever they did, but just to talk about it. And the problem is until we talk about it, we're gonna have these statistics be what they are for a while.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's sad. It makes me sad because one of the best things, like one of the best therapies for me has been doing this with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's helped me compartmentalize my life a little bit, and this is something that I do for me. This is something that I do for you. This is something that we do together as best friends.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that we do together because of how we feel so passionately about the nuclear family and the role of a dad and a dude in today's society, and just where there's a passion behind this that drives it, but it's also been therapeutic for me to be able to talk about it, to make videos about it, to
Mm-hmm.
talk about how we feel at the end of the day. Because ultimately, man, like, people love facts. The facts are the facts. Sterling
Yep.
isn't manipulating them. I'm not changing them. Um, but guys, it's time to just be vulnerable with each other. It's time to be able to have communication and to be able to talk about these things, because if not, this isolation syndrome, I mean, look at what it did to Vladimir Putin. He went in a bunker for 2.5 years and came out crazy as hell. We're all gonna go down a slippery slope and so to speak, die a slow death alone if we don't start unisolating, you know?
And one of the things I think about man, when we were hunter gatherers. You ever been so picture this, you ever been with a group of buddies and you're like, I don't know, at, as we say in the Northeast, up to camp, or you're or you're camping,
Oh,
or you're at the lake house or whatever with your guys, and you start a fire, and just without anybody talking about it, naturally everybody goes and sits around this fire, and then the stories start to get shared and the jokes start to happen, and there might be an adult beverage or two, but you the building of these connections with with these other guys around this primordial thing, it's just mimics this thing when we were you know using stone tipped spears, and it was just the hunting party out there in the world, chasing down
yeah.
whatever, you know.
No, you're 100% right, man. I mean, think about it. Think about this. You're into cars. Big
Mhm.
car guy. Okay.
Yeah.
You pull up in front of a place like an auto shop.
Mhm.
And there's a bunch of dudes in the auto shop.
Mhm.
And you get out and you start looking under the hood of your Skyline or your Camaro. Well,
Mhm.
guess what? Now all of a sudden every guy's over there looking under the hood with you going, "Oh,
Yep.
man, what's that?" There's
Yep.
just something that draws men to manly things.
There
As
is.
crazy as it sounds,
Yeah.
I mean,
How
it's
many
just
little boys do you know that without any coaxing, you know, love trucks, love
oh,
cars.
God. Yeah.
It's a natural proclivity to these things.
Yeah.
Men like stuff. We like stuff. We like to share factual information. That's just the way we are. We are not naturally drawn towards having these deep philosophical, emotional conversations.
I mean, we're
And
basically cavemen. We just have evolved a little bit.
I applaud women on their ability to be that
Yeah.
emotionally open naturally with each other. There was and I'm gonna forget which school did it, but it was a study. Nobody really knew what the study was, at least as far as the participants. But basically, what they did was they put two chairs in a room. They put two chairs in a room, and they had two men sit in them. And the chairs were side by side facing the same direction. The two men sat in the chairs, and they may have a mild conversation, but it was for the most part silence, right? They did the same thing with two women. The women sat in the chairs for a moment or two, began having conversation, and then they turned the chairs to face each other. I think more men need to be willing to turn the chairs. Life is a competition and we do it openly. We compete with each other in a very open way. We develop hierarchies, you know. Everybody knows who the leader of the group is, That's just how it happens
Yeah.
when it comes to guys. And, you know, we need to spend more time turning the chairs to each other and having these kinds of conversations with each other and being willing to be more vulnerable. And that doesn't mean that you're going around weeping copiously and pulling out your handkerchief every 5 minutes.
I am going to point this out, though. It is not unmanly if you do cry. I want to make sure you
I,
guys know
I,
that. Every
I didn't
once in a
say that.
while.
You are
Nope,
allowed
I know you
exactly
didn't.
two tears per year. No, I'm just
Yes,
kidding.
2 tears per year, or 2 tears in a lifetime, and mine was Tom Brady's second one, the birth of my daughter. But no, in all
Like you
seriousness,
said,
guys,
yeah.
don't beat yourself up because you cry. Real men cry. Go ahead.
Well, it's got nothing. And it's again, it's not. It is being in control of your emotions
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing that is just a moment to recognize that your emotions are real. And just because you have a little cry doesn't mean that you're any less of a man.
Now, I will tell you, I cry inside. I cry alone if I ever had cried because it got overwhelmed. Not something I share with people publicly. That's for sure. I'm not about to start crying on this podcast. That would be weird. Unless you play those stupid videos of soldiers coming home and surprising their kids. I don't know why. Those ones give me a little tearjerker every once in a while.
Hey, again, it is one of those things that we can sit around and pretend that we don't have emotions all we want to,
Yeah.
and deny them as being a thing.
Yeah.
You're lying to yourself. Recognizing that they are a real thing and being in control of them,
Yeah.
and those are important. But pretending that they don't exist is a lie to yourself, and it's not doing yourself any good. You're not improving your life by doing that.
Do you feel like we as dudes become harder or more emotional when we become dads? I say that because there's often times where I don't want my kid to see my emotion because I'm protecting her from it. I don't want her to know that I'm upset or that I'm taking on stress or a burden. But there's also a healthy balance of showing her that I can be emotional.
Sure.
And so, in a lot of ways, I feel like I personally have become less emotional as a parent because of how I have to compartmentalize it sometimes.
Well, I don't think it's not. Again, this is one of those things that I've been talking about. I don't think that you are less emotional. Those emotions have not changed, but your ability to deal with them, your ability to um, recognize them, and your ability to incorporate coping skills that you've learned throughout your lifetime, those are what have changed. The emotions are still there. You're still getting angry. You're still going to be sad. You're still going to be happy, elated, joyful. You're still going to be depressed sometimes. Those things they've always been there, but now how you deal with those have changed. And as you've grown and matured and you have these greater responsibilities in life, you know that you can't just be a slave to the emotions that you're experiencing in the moment, because it's not good for your family and ultimately not good for you. There is just an absolute mountain to unpack with this particular subject. I do want to say that I think it is vitally important that as men we recognize these things, that we be willing to talk about them, and that we really start focusing more in on finding those people in your life that you're able to have these conversations with, that you don't suffer in silence, and that if you are feeling I'm going to be very blunt here. If you are feeling like there is no hope, if you're feeling like you want to give up, you can't. Because whether you realize it or not, there are people who love you and there are people who need you around. And there are great resources out there. And please, guys, please, please take advantage of them if you even think that you need to.
Yeah, you know, guys, we're just two everyday normal dudes that want to talk about real shit. And sometimes it's hard to talk about real shit. Sometimes it's hard to even let people know that you're going through something real. We want you to know that you are not alone. As Sterling said, you are enough. Please don't suffer in silence. Whatever you do, get that battle buddy. If you can't find a battle buddy and you're feeling like you're stuck, reach out to us. All right. As Sterling said, it is a mountain to unpack. We're just two dudes, everyday dudes, dads, husbands, sons, boyfriends who just have gone through stuff ourselves. And, going through alone is tough. Don't do it. Remember you're enough. Remember that your life matters, that you are worth it, that you are loved, and there are people who need you. Reach out to us if you need anything. This whole thing is about community. We're here for you. And most importantly, always stay a dude.
I'm the king of my driveway, mowing lines so straight. Got a toolbox full of glory, and a mortgage by the plate.